Hey everyone, welcome to Real Estate Moguls. Our goal here is to help you learn about the real estate industry and how to succeed in it, how to make money in it, and we're going to be learning from some of the major players and the real estate moguls, all right, all over Canada and North America. So subscribe to the YouTube show and the podcast, okay? Share this with your friends if you like it. We have a property tech conference that's going to be happening every quarter in Toronto, so check those out and enjoy our show. On today's episode, I'm really excited for you to meet Claude Boiron. He is one of the few people I've met who I think is a true expert at both residential and commercial real estate. Okay, most people will focus on one of the two, and those who say they do both usually don't have the years of experience, and they haven't done the work and the knowledge and the research and got results for people to really say they're a good expert at both. He truly is. Okay, so check out some of this stuff that Claude has done. He's been practicing residential, industrial, commercial, and investment real estate since 2001. And in 2007, he co-authored a book called Commercial Real Estate Investing in Canada, the complete reference, okay, for real estate investors and professionals. And it is one of the most comprehensive collections of real estate information on the market. And when you talk to people, they believe that it really is a reference. It really is something that should be maybe required reading for the industry. It is that good, and it is really thick. Now, in 2009, he actually started mentoring realtors because he realized that, you know, there's a lot of systems out there that people say they work, but they don't actually work, you know, and realtors need to get smarter with how they spend their time, how they spend their money, and how they build their business. So hopefully today you'll get a sense of some of his, you know, common sense, no BS, real world, practical knowledge. He is now the founder of the Boiron Group, which is both a commercial and residential shop, a one-stop shop in Toronto. And in 2013, he then started writing, and he finished a complete guide on residential, all right, real estate information called Make More Money, Find More Clients, and Close Deals Faster. Okay, and so this book has talked about how agents, again, need to change the way they do business so that they can both better serve their clients, but also, again, spend their time, their money more wisely, and have the lifestyle that they're trying to get out of this industry. He teaches at the University of Toronto. He has a leader of a meetup group that brings together investors of multi-residential properties. He really is a true real estate expert and real estate mogul. So I'm excited. He's sharp, he's professional. I've had the pleasure of getting to know him, and it's time for you guys to get to know Claude Boiron.
Thanks, Grant.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
So when I first got to know you, you had a really complex story of how you started. Your father was a big name and a major player in the industry. You've moved and done real estate in different cities, countries, commercial, residential. So why don't you kind of give people a story and a background about who you are and how you are?
And you're probably going to ask me to keep it to like 2 minutes, right? I'll try to. I like to say I was born into the real estate world. So no joke, 4 or 5 years old, following my dad around with a hammer, not to hammer like wooden toys together, but literally at family properties, fixing stuff up. Kind of a miracle that I made it this far, because back then you didn't wear safety glasses or any of that stuff. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm the oldest of 6 children, and I was in my first year of university when my father said, look, you know, I have a lot to share. I think he was kind of getting the sense that he was getting on in age, and he said, you know, I kind of need you to come and learn. So I actually dropped out of university after my first year, started working with him, well, actually for him initially. We became partners a couple of years later. And so the first 10, 11 years of my career was just pure commercial work. And my father was one of the last great, maybe not one of the last, but let's say one of the last few handfuls of great generalists in commercial real estate in the GTA. So what I mean by that is he was as good with retail, office, and industrial leasing as he was in income-producing property sales, as he was for land development sales. One of the big things I enjoyed learning from him was the fact that he wasn't just a broker. He wasn't just saying, you know, client A do this, client B do that, and surely you'll find a good result. He was a very serious real estate investor himself. He developed land initially back in France, and then when he moved to Canada, in Canada as well. So what I really took away from that part of his teachings and mentoring was to really attempt, if at all possible from a financial perspective, whatever means you have at your disposal, to really try to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. I'll get off topic for 2 seconds here. I've had a really visceral reaction when I've heard some commercial realtors saying to their client, yeah, you know, this plaza, it's 50% vacant, but that's okay, we'll lease it out. And I've actually gone up to a few of them and said, how often have you been laying up at night, not able to sleep, because you've got a mortgage payment coming and you can't pay it because you've got too much vacancy? So until you felt that, please don't be flippant with other people's money. You cannot be, you know, pointing clients willy-nilly without really understanding the repercussions of your so-called guidance. After, like I said, about a decade and a bit with him, somewhere in that decade we co-authored that first book that you mentioned. It was a privilege to work with him on that. We spent almost 2 full years writing this book. It's been called the Bible, or the one-stop tome on commercial real estate investing in Canada, even North America. It's about 650 pages, so I don't wish it on anybody really, though I do insist it is the required reading for the course that I teach at U of T, also called Commercial Real Estate Investing. After that, I was asked to write a guide for Canadian realtors. You know a lot of realtors. You know that, you know, there's some fantastic ones, there's some okay ones, and there are some really not so okay ones. So it was a business guide for realtors, which was a lot more fun to write than the first one. And then what I noticed about 7, 8 years ago, a lot of my commercial clients were saying, Claude, you know, you're good at the numbers and all that stuff, and you're good at negotiating, you know, in these big deals, but you also know how to talk to people. Imagine that, a commercial broker who knows how to talk to people and has a little bit of emotional intelligence. They said, we really want you to work on a residential transaction for me. And I'd always push them off and say, I've got a great colleague who's residential who'll do that. Eventually I folded, I was weak, and I found a few things. Number one, from an emotional perspective, I really enjoyed working with human beings as opposed to numbers and corporations. So from an emotional fulfillment perspective, I was very rewarded on residential transactions. As you know, they're not all that fun and purely rewarding, but on average, you know, you're working with humans and families, and, you know, putting people into spaces where they create memories as families or as individuals. So that was really neat to learn. The other thing that I found was that commercial real estate is far more complex and complicated than residential real estate. So if you're good at commercial, and again, you have a little bit of a sense of how to deal with human beings, you can probably be really, really good on the residential side. And then the last thing that I had started to get an inkling of, and now is very, very true, is that commissions on the commercial side were becoming more and more compressed. So, you know, in Ontario, in Canada, we charge, a listing agent might charge 4 or 5% to sell a home. A cooperating agent who's representing a buyer is going to get paid on average about 2.5% of the sale price. On the commercial side, easily comes down very quickly. The moment you hit a $2 or $3 million sale price, that commission's coming down to 1.5%, 4 or 5 million, it's coming down to 1%, and it's not unusual for over $5 million commercial transaction to see the commission for a buyer's agent under 1%. So we can have a whole long discussion debate about commissions and how well they're earned in different scenarios, but having seen that and having kind of fallen in love with both commercial and residential, I made the very greedy choice to fulfill my bank account and my soul by transitioning my practice a little bit. I thought I would end up being about 50-50, residential versus commercial. Today, I'm about 30 to 40% commercial, the balance being residential. The team of agents that I run only do residential, and the commercial work that I do is really on a selective basis. It's either long-term clients or people who come to me and really they know what they're talking about, or they really want guidance.
I remember that one time you told me you had actually calculated that you think residential is 20 times better or easier or more profitable than commercial. Can you like talk, like what went into that?
I probably made a bad joke saying, I have a very scientific formula and this is it. It's 20 times harder or more complicated. So residential, I mean, in a sense, it can be very simple and easy. It can also be complex. You know, you can, freehold is very different from condo, right? For a freehold property, you don't have a condo bylaws or condo corporation to understand, or understand the hierarchy on a condo board and what's a status certificate and condo documents and all those types of things. But at the end of the day, residential is, you know, you have a place where usually you have an individual, a human being, or a collection of human beings, usually we call them families, who want to use a space to live. On the commercial side, not only do you not just have a living space, you have all these different asset classes. So you've got commercial, which is often retail. You've got mixed use, which in Toronto we know that as retail on the ground floor, office or apartment above. You have industrial, warehouses, factories, distribution depots, anything related to logistics. You have office buildings, you have land, and then you can get even more funky. You can get into amusement parks like Canada's Wonderland. That's a commercial transaction. So, you know, I could go on about the peculiarities and the specifications that you should really know about as a broker if you're transacting office space, 3 times longer than it would take me to talk about just pure residential. And then remember, office is just one of those: office, industrial, retail, mixed use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where I came up with the complexity number. And also on the commercial side, it's less about emotions. So on the residential side, you know, you have things that develop in an industry, such as bringing a deposit check with your offer, because emotionally, the sellers or the listing agent might think, well, maybe they're not fully ready, or maybe they'll back out of this. On the commercial side, because you're usually working with either business people or corporations, I find that people are much more used to contract law. They understand the possible repercussions of saying one thing in a contract and then saying, well, I changed my mind, I don't want it anymore. So that happens a lot less. But business people and corporations understand negotiating a lot better. So on the residential side in a contract, as you know, a lot of the time we'll talk about, well, are you leaving a sofa? You know, are the washer and dryer in good working condition? Can I have a 3-day condition to check my financing is okay? On the commercial side, we get into crazy stuff, like if the buyer does an environmental study and it comes back dirty, then the seller has to buy it back from them for 50 cents on the dollar. And if they don't, then certain things happen. So it's just layers on layers on layers that, even though they're more complicated, I get juiced up because it's beautiful. You can really, it's like guiding a symphony when you layer a transaction really so nicely.
One of the things I wanted to ask before we get into some other stuff was, so your dad was in the industry for so long. When you look back, if you were to pick 1 or 2 things that has not changed, that some people think is different, that you're like, no, it's the exact same as it used to be. Yeah. And if your dad was in business now and you were coaching him, like, this has got to change. If you want to be successful in today's market, this is 1 or 2 things that it used to work in the past, but now does not work. What comes to mind for those things? 1 or 2 things are timeless, 1 or 2 things that are like big changes.
Okay, the timeless stuff, they come to mind right away. The big changes I'll have to think about. So what's timeless on the commercial side, I think, is that money talks. So if you have the knowledge to do it, there's always going to be a demand for income-producing properties. So just to simplify it, income-producing on commercial can be as simple as having a Timmy's or a Starbucks on the ground floor, leasing in a building, and then having, again, an office or apartment or 2 above. So that we'd call income-producing because the landlord of that property, the owner, is receiving that rent as revenue. What's timeless about that is, you know, people get into super complicated analysis for relatively small commercial transactions, so under $5 million. They say, well, let's look at the internal rate of return, or let's do the modified internal rate of return, or let's discount the cash flow and figure out this and that. what's I find is timeless, again, for that sub $5 million commercial transaction for income producing properties is we use cap rates, capitalization rates. Yeah. So we figure out what the net operating income is and we apply a cap rate. And what some people don't like about it is that a cap rate can be kind of like an asking price, subjective. But what I love about them is that they take into account everything. They take into account current condition of the property, its location, how strong the tenants are, how much you can rely on that cash flow and that revenue going down the road, any factors in the neighborhood that might change the value of that property. All that's usually captured in the cap rate. That really, really has not changed. What's changed? I'd say when I started with my father, so going back almost 2 decades, you had a lot of generalists like him. So a lot of people who did so many transactions that they just became incredibly good at negotiating, at deal making, at understanding what was specific to retail versus industrial, of course, but that the differences weren't so life-changing. Now, fast forward, again, 15, 20 years, you have hyper specialization. I think this is true in a lot of industries. In the commercial real estate industry in Canada, you would think, you have these big box commercial brokerages, we see the names on the signs, and they have, well, first of all, what I find a little funny is everybody's an executive VP or some sort of partner. It's really interesting, but that's a whole other chip on my shoulder. Yeah, it's a business card LinkedIn status thing. What's happened is that you have practice groups now in these huge corporations, these commercial real estate brokerages that span nationally or even internationally, and they'll have not only a practice group for Ontario, they'll have a practice group that's GTA, they'll have a practice group that's Mississauga and West Toronto separately. And when I say practice group, I'm actually not talking about commercial real estate in general. I'm saying you'll have a Mississauga office practice group and a West Toronto office practice group. And it even goes deeper. You'll actually find that certain brokerages or teams or individual agents at these large commercial brokerages, they specialize to the point of saying, I only represent office tenants. My contract doesn't allow me to work with landlords. My father's the landlord of a huge office building. I cannot take his business. So hyper specialization. That's something that I find has changed quite a lot.
Okay, very cool. All right, so I want to get into some residential, and first I want to talk about the problems that you see. You're on the ground and you're there's problems that are still unsolved.
Sure.
From the homeowner experience level. There's problems that the agent who's on the ground trying to get the deals done and build a business and a lifestyle is still having, and people are not solving. And then there's a lot of talk about the brokerage model and being the team leader, being the broker. How do you make sure that you provide value? What's your business model like? Is it feasible? So, talked about 1 or 2 problems for each of those groups you think are really standing out for you.
So I guess I'll start with, I think one of the massive problems is learning how to delegate and allow others to do stuff as opposed to do it all yourself. Many small brokers and team leaders, they've had great individual success, and it's a massive mind shift to be able to take that step and say, you know what, I'm going to start moving away from shaking every hand of every homeowner and starting to become a business owner and a manager. And some people decide they don't want to do that finally. They go, you know what, I'm satisfied with my revenue, I'm going to keep doing that, I like the lifestyle, I can't be a manager of people, and I miss that interaction. So I'd say it comes down to, if I had to lump it all, the biggest problems are HR. Finding the right people, training them regularly, keeping them up on the most up-to-date stuff in the industry, keeping them motivated, etc. So for individual agents, whether they're on their own or they're on a team, let's say they're on a team, one of the things is kind of the disconnect that they can feel when the team leader or the rainmaker is the one really bringing in leads, or really it's their power of their network and their 10, 20 years of past clients who are coming back to the team saying, I want to transact, or I need assistance again. I think that there's a bit of a pride and ego issue there. So having the right personality profile for an agent on a team is important, because they can't be too A-type. They have to be just enough to go out and push that business and semi-hunt for it, but they can't want to be the one in the spotlight because a lot of the time they're not going to be. Team's not going to be named after them. They're not going to have their face on every award, and people are going to be coming to the team asking for the team leader, and it's going to be one of the agents on the team often who's going to assist. And also when agents are out on the field, I think technology has become quite important. It's not good enough if somebody says, hey, I need a mortgage agent referral, or I kind of want to know how much that home sold for. If an agent's on the road all day and those questions happen in the morning, a lot of consumers are going to find it bizarre if that agent needs to physically run to an office to use a landline to call around or to use a computer to do something. They have to be able to get into a database of service providers that the team endorses and works with. They have to be able to get into their CRM if they need to get back to people. So being connected from the field, I think, is important. And what I've found, and it's been a personal failing of mine early on when I was starting a team, is not having sufficient systems and processes. I think this is, again, a case for a lot of entrepreneurial business owners. So for individual agents, it can be very frustrating when a team leader is saying, do it this way, but isn't giving them that step-by-step, proven technique or process to follow.
How quickly do you say agents ramp up? Like when agent comes to you, I'm brand new,
yeah,
and you're like, I got a plan to help you be successful.
Yeah.
What does that ramp up time look like?
Great question. So I think it's different for everybody, but generalizing, a lot of realtors like to talk about transaction, number of deals. I like to talk about money. A great manager once said to me, or I overheard her saying, that any agent who starts full-time into being a realtor, for the first 2 years, they need to be working 50 hours minimum a week. And as you know, to people like you and me, that might sound like nothing. To many people, that sounds like a lot. If somebody's doing that, I regularly will tell agents that I meet that there's either something, they're not made for the business, or there's something wrong with the team that they're with and the processes and all the stuff that's not clicking properly. If they're not making at least $50,000 their first year, I think that with the right personality, and I'm not talking about a superstar, I just mean kind of a middle of the road, right personality, willing to take direction and willing to work hard, minimum $80,000 the first year. And I personally think that a second year, in our industry, if you're not doing 100,000, you really need to reconsider what you're doing.
It's crazy because, I mean, they always say the average agent only makes like 35, 40, but that's taking into consideration a whole bunch of part-timers. And then it's like, I talk to agents and they're like, I'm in my first year and I know that this year I don't really expect to make any money. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, whose system, who is teaching you?
Yeah.
How about the homeowner? So when you look at the experience that you wish it could improve, because these problems are still there and you see the homeowner experiencing it, what comes to mind?
At the end of the day, and that's kind of the theme of when I'm doing interviews like this or talking to realtors and other entrepreneurs, it's really about the human connection. You've probably heard this, people will work with you, and this is in real estate as well as any other service business. It has the same thing to do with accountants and lawyers and even car salespeople. People will do business with you invariably if they know, like, and trust you. You know that. You've heard that, I'm sure. Yeah. I hate to sound old-fashioned, but I really, really believe in that. My father would say silly things like, do what you say you're going to do. How simple is that? Yeah. I'll be there at 8 o'clock. Be there at 7:55 just in case. Yeah. I will drop off that sign tonight. Doesn't matter what happens, snowstorm or no, just drop off that sign tonight. You said you would do it. So coming back to homeowners, a lot of homeowners, as you know, are turning online. And so I think that their challenge is, how do I sift through all the junk and, frankly, the real estate porn that's out there, right? Pictures and videos all over the place. Look at this angle.
Like the agent anymore.
Right. And so how do I sift through all of this static and noise to figure out if I trust somebody? So independent verification or anything that's necessary for a homeowner to feel like this huge, huge responsibility and transaction of trust is based on, right from the get-go, they have a really good sense that I don't have to be worried that this is going to go badly. As opposed to what I see a lot of in the industry is people make a knee-jerk reaction, oh, I kind of like this person, I'll work with them, but subconsciously or consciously, the whole way through, they're going, did I make the right choice? Are they really going to do the right thing? And so the problems that I see then are, let's say there's a blip in the market, or 3 more properties, God forbid, come on the market in the same neighborhood or the same building that are competing properties. When a homeowner does not have that trust, that really deep, true trust with their representative from the get-go, then they make knee-jerk reactions. Oh my gosh, do we take the property off the market? Or, oh, you told me to list it now, I should have waited till the spring. But I really think that when homeowners are able to work with people that they can trust at least, and hopefully know and like, everything else is smoother for everybody.
Let me ask you if you heard this recently, because
Sure.
So I've got some developers
Yes.
for my tech,
Okay.
and we always like to sometimes go back and forth about agents.
Yeah.
And one of my developers is like, I don't want to work with an agent, period. Like I just don't want to talk to them. I don't care about knowing and liking and trusting someone. I just want to just buy real estate. And like, why can't I just go do that? And so I'm wondering, there is an audience saying, hey, that's how people think. They don't think I need to know, like, trust someone. I just want to pay less fees to buy or sell a home, and I just want it done on my computer. What do you say about those people who are like, maybe I don't need to know, like, trust someone. I just need to be able to buy or sell a home as little as possible, as quick as possible?
That's a great question, and I have tons of different ways to answer it, but some things come to mind, and I don't mean to be flippant, but does that developer file his own taxes? If your taxes are simple, you're employed full-time, you have no write-offs, you have no family, no dependents, no education credits, probably you're okay filing your own taxes online. I think so. As soon as you get into higher income brackets, as soon as you get into dependents, as soon as you get into the modern family, which often means that there's been a separation or divorce somewhere along the line, there are support payments, there are health tax credits for your kids, or maybe you're an entrepreneur and you pay people and you have service providers and expenses and potentially write-offs that you want to do legally and not get in trouble. A lot of those people usually engage professional assistants to keep more money in their pocket at the end of the day. So similarly, I would say, and I think you know this too, but we have to have this discussion. Similarly, I would say that people who have been through the trenches, who have been in the trenches, who've been in business or have a lot of life experience under their belts, they'll acknowledge, and I'm the first one to admit too, or not even admit, to just share, you can sell your own house. You can go and buy a condo from somebody who's got it on a for sale by owner website, probably without ever talking to a nasty realtor.
Yeah. And you've been able to do that for decades.
Indeed, you have. You really have. And we have but to look to our neighbors in the south who have 10, 20, 50, 100 times larger marketplaces than we do, more consumers, and invariably, even when you go into those numbers of people, of consumers, they're, for the most part, the most successful, profitable transactions are being guided by realtors. So again, it's not protectionist. We're very comfortable with what we do. I'm not too concerned about the future for us. Let me put it this way. I mentioned earlier I'm the oldest of 6. And sometimes I'll tell this to clients. If you were my brother or my sister, and of course you're my brother, but I mean my blood brother, there's a fist bump that needs to happen somewhere along there. But if you were, my immediate family, I would advise that you interview realtors, find people who have just a wealth of knowledge behind them and a track record that just is cannot be, you can't poke a pin in it in any way. I truly believe, and I've seen the statistics and analyzed our own numbers versus for sale by owner numbers, that you're further ahead 9.5 out of 10 times or 9.9 out of 10 times if you have proper representation. Yeah,
no, the data I saw was 34% higher sales price on the home for the sellers paying the fees with an agent than without. Yeah. So yeah, pay 5 or 6% to get 34% more. I'll do that any day.
It's a bit of a no-brainer.
Right?
Yeah.
Cool, so now, I love tech and the future of how it can enhance the industry, how it already is enhancing the industry. Sure. So What are some of your favorite solutions that you're even seeing right now or using right now yourself that has helped either you, the agent, you, the broker, or is helping the homeowners?
As a realtor and as a broker and a team leader, one of the things that's important is being able to turn the faucet on and off for lead flow. Whether they're super qualified prospects or lukewarm ones, let's call it. So there have been some online lead generation platforms that have done well in the last few years. I don't think they work well for everybody. I think that it takes a certain personality and a certain je ne sais quoi to be able to turn those around and stay committed.
It's not just buy leads and then you make money. You got a whole system. You got to follow up. You got to work on. What are some of your favorite platforms for online leads?
Online reviewing of realtors. So there are a couple sites that are becoming well known for reviewing agents. And that allows, and so the cool thing about that is that it puts all that real estate porn aside. It's like there are consumers, especially the ones who might think, well, maybe I can do this better, or I can do this as well as a realtor. If they've stumbled in that thought process and realized that maybe they can't, or they started doing it and went, whoa, this is more than I thought. They're not looking for pretty pictures and videos and listings online. They're looking for somebody who can actually just do the job well. The top one that I know of is called 5 Walls. So we're actually an affiliate agent with them. And so what happens is you put your transactions online, you're verified. What's really neat about it is you're verified reviews. So it has to be for a specific transaction, a real human being, and they match up the paperwork to know that this is a transaction that took place, and here are the words and the rating out of 5 that this consumer gave Claude or Grant or whoever it is as the realtor. We have been challenged the last few years. I'd say in the last 18 months, we've started doing a better job of, it sounds, you're talking about what's tech and new and all that, boring stuff, Facebook, Google reviews, right? So starting to get more into, or we have successfully lately gotten much more into that. That's where communities are growing.
I always like saying thank you, Mark Zuckerberg. Facebook has helped me make lots of money. So I love it.
True.
It's true. And it's a great platform.
And there's even that, coming back to the first thing I said, there are even Facebook leads that can be generated as well, right? So, but getting into really techie stuff, one thing that we identified, I don't want to put a time on it, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, was 3D technology was starting to get used more and more, just starting to get used in real estate. And we started playing around with it, and so we've now, probably for about 4 years at least, if not 5, every single listing we take, we do the usual, I call it the boring stuff. Super high res, legitimate pictures, not touched up to be stretched or anything crazy, legitimate pictures with good lighting. We now do 3D tours for all of our listings, whether it's a condo or a house. And I really enjoy that. We've had, I don't know if it's 2 or 3 times now, where in Toronto we've had a consumer, a buyer, who we've taken through a property. They said, this looks great, but I'm actually not the one paying for it. It's my partner, it's my parents, and they'll be back in 2 weeks. And as you know, if this was in 2016 or 2017, that meant the property was going to have been sold already for 2 weeks by the time the money person came through. So being able to email a link anywhere in the world and have somebody literally on a tablet or on a computer walk through and get 95% of the same feel, that depth perception, and be able to look up, oh, smooth ceilings in the kitchen, not popcorn ceiling, or whatever it is, has actually allowed us to do a few more transactions. And representing sellers, they really, really love the fact that they can email off a website where somebody has crazy pictures, a 3D tour, and the next things that we do is we do floor plans for every property now. One of my frustrations with our industry is that there's not really a big onus on us, in Ontario at least, to put an exact square footage. Your next tech venture, figure out how to get that accurately, affordably available information. Because as you know, right now it's a range. And with condos, for example, becoming smaller and smaller, you say, oh, the condo is between 500 and 599 square feet. It's a 20% difference, isn't it? Yeah. So which one is it, 501 or 599? So that can be very frustrating. So
3D mapping, they're the ones that are going to be able to have measure it instantly.
Exactly. Yeah, just with lasers or better cameras with better depth perception, stuff like that.
Have you had any thoughts when you think about, like, I see a future where the industry might be like this, And if you're speaking to some wizard developer out there who can pretty much craft up anything that your mind's eye and mind can make up, when you think about the future of real estate, the future of homeownership, the future of residential, the whole industry, what are some ideas or thoughts you have on where it should go?
I guess I sort of touched on, well, I have two things that come to mind right away. The first one is I'm maybe have a mild love affair and obsession with decision trees. Because once you start digging into them, I mean, they can be both beautifully simplistic but exponentially complicated, and really explore every possibility in a home search, or in the decisions you can make in a relationship, or if if I go with a house versus a condo, let's project down all the potential trees in 20 years. Where will I be better off? So decision trees that are made to answer questions or to serve up realistic possibilities quickly are of interest to me. The other thing is, as data is becoming the most valuable commodity in the world, if it's not already. And there are some organizations that have an enormous amount of data, and not looking to poke at them. I certainly don't want to be fined or lose my license. But there are some real estate boards, some very large ones, potentially the largest in the world, as well as other organizations such as municipal property assessment corporations, who have literally some of the best property databases in the world. So we have two organizations that I'm hinting at in Toronto or in Ontario who have insane data. And if you asked if a programmer or somebody were to say, what could I do? I would say maybe don't give me, maybe I shouldn't be able to download all of that to an Excel spreadsheet, which is going to crash any server anyways, because there's so much. But allow me to query those databases as I want. So for example, and I don't want to get too technical, but on the Toronto MLS, which is one of the boards that we're a member of, if I want to find, let's say I see a property, I mentioned earlier, maybe it's been on the market for 30 days. So that's not panic time in any way at this point in our market where we're at locally. But if it's been on the market for 30 days, 5 other times in a row, that indicates either the sellers are incredibly stubborn. I'd also have to know how much was it listed for each time, each itineration of the listing. There's actually no way that I know of, and as I've been hinting, I really dig in and try to look at all the angles we can use the systems we have access to. There's no way that I know of where I could push a button or 3 buttons and say, any property that's been on the market right now for more than 30 days, how many times have each of them been listed before, and have the prices gone up or down, and et cetera. There are some other boards that we're a member of that are not far from Toronto who have sort of started doing that. So when you first log into the system as a broker, you see properties that they're asking price. How many properties on the board, the entire real estate board, have increased in asking price, have decreased in asking price, have been relisted? So if you're a bargain hunter as a broker, or you have clients who are who are opportunistic, you might, when you log in, click on that little button that says, here are the properties that have just been relisted. Whereas on the Toronto Real Estate Board, if I want to run a search like that, I can find all the properties that have been listed for more than 30 days now, but then I have to go manually and search address by address to see how many times each one's been listed in the past. So a long, convoluted thing to say, just let us query those databases freely.
Archive the past and let us play with it.
And it is archived.
In the present.
Exactly.
So to tie a bow on this whole residential industry, imagine I'm a first-time home buyer.
Sure.
Okay, so I want to get in the market, I want to buy a home, and I want to have it appreciate. I want to buy a home where it appreciates over time, and I'm flexible in location, so I don't mind commuting, and I really want to find a home that I can buy that will appreciate over time. What advice do you have for me? What areas in Toronto or surrounding would come to mind as some things to help me right now?
Sounds like you want to go through my 1 hour first time kind of meeting with a buyer interview. It's a complicated answer. It involves 30, 40, 50 questions, but just to try to wrap it quickly, house versus condo will get you different answers. In the GTA right now, depending on your budget also, if you have a limited budget, so call it a purchase price of under $500,000, I think any condo, any freehold property in the GTA under $500,000, under $700,000 is going to do quite well. I think we're going to see double-digit appreciation over the next couple of years, solely because of limited affordability and limited supply. It's all in the last few years with government intervention in lending practices. It's all about affordability, and the pyramid used to be kind of like this, where there was a certain affordability at the bottom, then you got into the bottom, second tier, and fewer people could afford, but then you had still a wide middle ground. Now what's happened is with this intervention, the pyramid's gone like this. So you've got very few people who can afford over $1 million, over $1.5 million, and an enormous, like that pyramid just got squashed and the sides just shot out with millions and millions of people now in that bottom rung of affordability with stress testing and minimum down payment requirements. I really feel more comfortable advising to people to buy for their own use as a principal residence. If they want to control appreciation outside and above natural appreciation, just the market appreciation, buy in where you can make changes. So it's either an addition, it's converting the basement into an apartment with a separate entrance, it's converting a two-story house into 3 units. Maybe it's buying something that's got live-work zoning allowed, where you can run your business, and just maybe you can apply to put a sign on the side of it that you can charge somebody to pay you income for. So I mean, there are a lot of things that I'm mentioning here that are not going to apply to every property. It's more a mindset of how to approach it and how to analyze possibilities.
Okay. At least no area. All right, fine. Give me one. Can you give me one area name that you like?
Well, let me put it this way. My brother is a lawyer by trade, one of my brothers. Yeah. I call him number 5 because there's 6 of us. Number 5 is a full-time flipper and a real estate investor. I know that he enjoys a little further from Toronto, so getting into, I've actually always liked Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge. Yeah. I think Toronto is a massive, massive hotbed of tech and startups, but anywhere near Toronto, outside of Toronto, it would be Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge. London, I think, holds some potential. Brantford holds some potential. Barrie is still, at a price point that's accessible to many people, but it saw a huge swing over the last several years. And then I think some people are underappreciating out east. There are some opportunities that you can look for. So, for example, I don't want to name too many names, but some large car manufacturers east of Toronto who've announced that they won't be sticking around. So what's likely to happen, and an economist could speak to this maybe better than me, what's likely to happen is a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. A lot of people will not be able to stay right there local and will move away to find jobs applicable to their skill sets. What that's going to do is to put an enormous amount of supply on the market, probably within 6, 12, 24 months of one another. My father always said, real estate, you can tie it to one thing, employment. So what happens if you just yank the rug out of employment in a region or in a municipality? Probably going to have people who are moving or who have to sell to start renting or who are selling a freehold to buy a more affordable condo, etc.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, now for the seller. Okay, so now I'm a homeowner. I want to sell my house. I want to get something bigger and better for my family. And what's going through my head is, I hear the market, this is for Toronto in particular, I hear the market softening, and there's different changes in taxes coming around, there's interest rate hikes being talked about, and so it's like, ooh, I don't know if I want to sell right now, but then I also hear that there's a recession coming in 2020, 2021, and I don't know if that's actually going to impact Canada more than it maybe did back in 2008, 2009 in the States. So what kind of advice do you have for me?
My advice to clients, let me put it that way, is, and we ask some really tough questions. We'll be ballsy enough to say, what happens if you lose your job? Can you afford this house that you're saying you want to buy? So in a similar vein, I would say, rather than, I don't really believe in a principal, I believe a principal residence can have a component of investment to it, and obviously make up one's, a portion of one's net worth. I don't know that it should be used primarily as an investment vehicle. And so the question sort of sounds like it's, do I buy a larger property in Toronto, where it's going to be more expensive, or do I buy a larger property and maybe financially it's a lateral move or even a downward move in getting into a larger square footage property outside of Toronto? My answer would be, irrespective of what happens in the marketplace, recession or not, you have to look at, this is a financial advisor conversation almost. You have to look at how stable are your revenues, if it's individual or business, if you own a business. How much investment do you have to carry you through if there are tough times? And how much of your investment portfolio does your principal residence represent for you? If all your eggs are in that one basket, I wouldn't take any risks. Say, get further from Toronto, lateral move financially, or put a little bit of money into a bank. If you believe what you said is going to happen is coming down the road, and your employment is secure, but it's not rock solid, and you're not your own boss, and you can't write your own ticket, get into a property that's not more expensive than what you're in now, but that satisfies your personal or family obligations or needs.
Okay, well, I think we need to bring you back to do some commercial stuff because we didn't get into it. Because you had so much to say, more than I expected for residential, so I appreciate it.
Basically, you say I talk too much.
Hey, it was all good stuff. I don't know about you, but I got a lot of notes on these pages. So we will definitely bring Claude back because he's got lots of stuff to share. And I like, and you speak well. And I think I would love to go to your university class if I was a student, right?
It starts in 45 minutes.
It starts
no
in 45
joke,
minutes.
So
we got to start
right
wrap
now.
up, right?
Yeah.
But if you guys want to get in touch with Claude, how can they get in touch with you?
You know what? I'm old school. I actually give out my cell phone number. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And for the techies out there, you can text me. So my cell phone number is 416-993-8199. And I always say it twice, even in voicemail messages. That's 416-993-8199.
There you got it. I hope you guys believe what I believe. He is truly a real estate mogul in Toronto because he knows, he walks the walk, and like he says, he talks the talk and walks the walk.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming and appreciate all your insight.